This morning we had a subject that seems to come into special focus this week. The news from around the world is rather complicated and leaves a lot to be desired. But the subject of stress will apply very neatly to the present situation. Nearly everyone in every walk of life today is in stress over something. And things do not look too bright right ahead to relieve that situation. I was talking to a man not long ago, and he posed an interesting question. And I wonder how many of us have ever thought of it. Very close to us all, but sort of distant in our retrospections. Who runs the show? Are we run in a universe dominated by a divine power, or are we run by a group of people who change every few years and do almost as they please? Is this universe under law or under litigation? The present moment it's mostly litigation. Are we really a people with a creed, with a code, with a morality and an ethic? Or are we someone who have imagined these things, who has actually continued to live only according to his own will in a universe which he assumes he can change to meet his own fancy? I think today this question comes definitely into focus. The question of what is the basis of the rules by which we should live and must live. Our ancient brethren, who were more or less accused of superstition, were of the opinion that a divine power ruled all things, that a principle beyond human judgment kept the solar system in order, that planets and stars and galaxies were not subject to the whimsies of political factions, but were part of a great universal plan which was wise enough and great enough to take care of the greatest of all things and at the same time be mindful of a sparrow's fall. We believed in a God capable of dominating the creation which he had brought forth. We believed in a universal principle of integrity which should be and must be obeyed. We believed in the brotherhood of man. We believed in honesty and integrity and common sense. Well, we didn't live all of it, but we claimed to have some concept of it. We wanted to believe that we lived in an honest creation. And while we were not sure that we were honest ourselves, we were convinced that honesty was the best policy. Now we come to a time in which practically all of these rules are being broken. This man I mentioned who spoke to me spoke about his family. His children are not following the laws that he followed when he grew up. He followed the Ten Commandments. To his children, the Ten Commandments mean nothing. The only thing is wrapped up in one commandment: do what you want to. If you get caught, so what? If you end your life precipitously in crime, so what? Nothing means anything anyway. The universe of a divine plan has faded from the popular mind. And in its place we have something that is in trouble all the time. Now, if it was true that we could live in a soulless world and be comfortable and happy and cheerful and cooperative and honest, might be worth contemplating. But all we are getting out of the present system is trouble. We are getting narcotics, we are getting all kinds of venereal ailments, we are getting morality down to nothing. We are losing all integrity in government and in policy and in the professions. We are in terrible trouble, and yet we insist that there are no laws or rules that have to be obeyed to stay out of trouble. We talk about them. We say that an individual should be honest, and another one will say, well, as honest as you can be under existing conditions. And conditions are so bad, he's not very honest. So we have the problem here of a dishonesty that is not working and an honesty that has been rejected. We are very much troubled in the restoration of certain religious values. We believe in this principle of religion and morality. We have inherited from the past several great religions, and most of those who have followed those religions honestly and honorably have been decent people. We do not know now which way to turn. Is there a religion? Are they all superstitions? Is there nothing real but the desire for wealth and honor? Is there nothing that is rewarded except prosperity? If these are the rules of things, we better take another look. Because unless we have inherited an integrity, we've got to create one. We cannot go on like this. We cannot go on breaking every rule of proper living and enjoy prosperity and security and look to a good future for our children. So the problem comes right down to our front doorstep in the problem of modern stress and strain. We are under stress all the time. An individual who lives contrary to his own integrity is always under stress. An individual who has no integrity at all to live with, he's under still worse stress. For stress has something to do with honor, and honor has something to do with an integrity at the source of things. If there is no right at the source of life, then all integrity is foolish. Or, perhaps under those conditions, we should settle down and try to create an integrity. We have to have it, and it looks very much as we go back over the pages of history that we had it when we were born, that we had it when our ancestors were born, and that we've had it since the beginning of time. The only problem with this is that this integrity interferes with the profit system. It interferes with the irresistible impulse to dominate somebody. And in military and political matters, the almost inevitable pressure to conquer the world. Now we look back and see that from the beginning of things, we had some ambitious people. We had a few who were deciding to do the best they could for themselves at the expense of everybody else. One of the first we have of that particular category was Alexander the Great. He was considered fairly great, although he on one occasion said he would give up all his greatness if he had the vision of Aristotle. But anyway, Alexander went out to conquer the world and died under the walls of Babylon in his 30s. Died of dissipation in a world that conquered him with every fault and vice of his time. The great conqueror faded away to nothing. And along came Caesar. He was a pretty sharp man. He did pretty well for himself. And if we can believe the oration of Marcus Aurelius and some of the others of the time, Caesar was a considerably good man. He didn't accept the crown of empire. He was not a selfish man, but he was a strong man, and he led his people into a number of conquests, etc., etc. So, this man who turned down the power to be emperor of Rome was assassinated by his nearest friend. There went another ambition, went into trouble, and ceased forever. And so it goes all the way on down. One after another, these things happened. Muhammad poisoned at the Feast of Kaiba. One after another, these great conquerors. Hitler, dead in a bunker in Berlin. Mussolini, dead on an Italian highway. One after another, all these great ambitious people who have tried to conquer the world have never been able to take control of more of it than necessary for their own graves. So, is this system working? Is it right that we can go out and decide to conquer the world? If we win, we have glory forever. No. If we get the best we can hope for is a few years of glory before death separates us from all our material possessions. The whole world as we live in it now is championed by a way of life that ends at the grave. It ends when your relatives take over the estate. It then ends when your various offices are vacated for another executive to take over. All we have is a little while. And in our great haste and our great hurry and our great meditative frenzy, we've got to make into this little span the achievements of the ages. We've got to be the greatest people who ever lived, living in the greatest nation that ever lived, and in the greatest trouble that any nation has ever been in. So this is the way it sits. And we are now looking at it through the eyes of a stress-ridden people, a people who are not quite certain where tomorrow is going to lead them. Now we have had in this century, we've had some of the fanciest wars in all time. We have also had the development of nuclear warfare, the most deadly of all time. And here a world that has been going through various stages of civilization for at least 10,000 years that we have record of, and it learned in every one of those 10,000 years the value of peace, is now dedicated to the greatest destruction the world has ever known. What's the matter? Is everybody slowly going crazy? Is it possible that there is in the human being no more of integrity than that? What has happened to humanity? What has happened to those nice people we used to know? What has happened to the neighbor who comes over with the boiled chicken dinners? What happens to these things? There are a few left. There are a few. There are enough of them to make it certain that there were such people. But these better people, kindly people, peace-loving people, possibly outnumbering all the others, when the time comes, the vote goes for war. Or the war is not prevented by some major effort. We are now in a problem involving Congress. We're involving foreign relations. The countries invade each other while we watch. And we go on in a world that, as far as seems to me, we're going nowhere in and can't go anywhere. We want to start a new century, but we can't start a new century with a dozen wars. We've got to begin to think through the purpose for existence. And that brings us to the first question that we must always answer. Is there a purpose? Are we really part of something that goes on and goes into future hope and aspiration? Are we part of any great evolving whole whose body is nature and whose soul is God? Are we part of a lawful pattern, or were we created by intelligence and consciousness and wisdom? Well, who else could, or what else could have created this? We certainly weren't created in barnyards. How did we come to be? How does this magnificent structure that we call the human being come out into nature? More marvelous and wonderful than anything that man has ever invented is the simple fact of himself. Yet coming as a miracle upon the face of the earth, this miracle does nothing but go out and kill his neighbors. Why does these things have to be this way? Something is basically wrong in the thinking of people. They are inconsistent no matter how you figure it. If there is no purpose, then the idealists are all wrong. If there is a purpose, then the materialists are all wrong. There has to be an answer that makes common sense. And common sense in this time, he seems to have something to do with immediate correction of existing errors. Now, we can say that now they probably can't stop another few wars that are going to come along. We have no way of preventing them. No, perhaps not. But we can set the machinery in motion which will ultimately prevent them or outlaw them. We can accept the example of the present process in the Near East as an inspiration to start something to end this type of circumstance. There is no reason why we should go on dreaming of a beautiful world to come and killing our neighbor every day. This is something that I think Nostradamus was quite a prophet. He pointed out that before the end of the 20th century, which is coming up, 21st century, by the way, there would be a great upheaval, a final decision, a weighing of conscience, peace versus war, conquest versus gift, nobility versus selfishness. There would be one great battle for integrities, and this battle would be won by integrity. And that will be won because looking around, people can gradually come to see there's nothing else that'll solve anything. There is no substitute for honesty. And those who try to live by honesty, you generally die as a result of gang war or something of this nature. Also, the human body can't take it. The kind of world we live in now is enough to destroy the health of any creature that ever comes into it. The only ones that are really safe now are the ones that are so far off in a glacier somewhere that we haven't found them yet. As soon as we find them, we'll get rid of them also. We are getting rid of all the bugs that are pests, and one of these days the bugs may get up and turn us away because we're pests. But whatever it is, we are in the face of a problem that calls for a major survey of values. We're in a situation in which our entire way of life over the last 2,000-3,000 years must be reappraised. We must find out why we are here, and if we can't find out, then we can't hope to survive. If we don't know what to do and keep on making mistakes, well, at least we can see we're making the mistakes. And this gives us some hope that we can correct them. But if we consider our mistakes works of art and consider the misdoings as great achievements, there's not much we can look forward to. So we now have a real situation coming up, maybe more so in a few weeks or a few months, in which we have got to decide what kind of a world we live in. Whether we're on the side of that which is constructive or acknowledging there is no constructive, and on the side of profit and immediate pleasure, whatever it may be. I think we can all look around enough to see from history, from the modern books, from everything we see in life, that there are rules. There are rules in this game. And the few people we have who have been relatively happy have been the ones who kept the rules. There is no doubt in the world that it is possible to live comfortably, pleasantly, and cooperatively on this planet. But without some form of careful thinking, we're going to get into trouble. We're getting into trouble. The moment we break one law, we endanger another one. The moment we try to do something that is wrong, something that was previously right goes bad. We can't start a chain reaction of mistakes without those mistakes running through every part of our fabric. We may have intended nothing more or less than to reduce the price of gasoline or something, and it ends up with an atomic war. All these things are part of a lack of integrity and motives. Now their saying is, at least at the moment, that we need some kind of a new dispensation. That we need a new concept of why we are here. That we need to know something that will enable us to be here and survive here and have a constructive existence while we are here. This thinking at the moment doesn't involve immortality. That is even further out. That is something that interferes with nearly everybody's ambition. But we need something. So we're going to try to work out, in one way or another, an acceptable doctrine. Now, is this doctrine going to be the doctrine of a layman? Is this doctrine going to be sterile of all religion? Is it going to be something merely of daily contacts? Is it something in which we're going to imprison people for being dishonest, but not for being immoral? Are we going to find one way or another of perpetuating our mistakes and making little circles around them and call them our virtues? That's not likely to work very well either. If we go back and look over the grounds of millions of people that have lived and built and dreamed and hoped and died on this little ball in space, if we look out, we will realize that the great work of these people has been done by those with dreams, hopes, ideals, and convictions beyond materiality. The Leonardo da Vinci's, all of these, Michelangelo, all such great artists, all musicians, all idealists in painting and everything, all of them have had principles. The great religious art of Guidorini, all these things, the great and the lesser life of Christ by Albrecht Dürer, all these great religious works were religious. They were written by people who had deep convictions. The greatest music of our early time was church music. Music doing honor to the divine power at the root of life. Most of the ancient laws of people of all religions centered on the altars of their gods. Here Zeus reigned supreme over the powers of Greece. and he went over to Rome and became Jupiter and remained in power there till the Romans corrupted him, and then he fell. So everywhere where the gods come, they remain in good service and good standing until men corrupt them. And when men corrupt them, they're not going to get up and say, I've corrupted God. They're going to say, there wasn't any God in the first place. We're going to protect our own dishonesty rather than to admit that there was something that we destroyed out of our own selfishness. So as we go along, we watch these different things that have happened. We watch the dreams and hopes and aspirations of the best people we know, all down through ages. We look at the great monuments of the past, and then we begin to look at the parallels today. Now, in the present century, we have watched the development of a religious art that was considerable. We have seen it grow and unfold. We've seen it struck by an early frost and destroyed. We see the religions of the Soviet republics gradually coming back after 40 years of being denied existence. The people found a very simple fact: can't live without them. Well, what you can't live without must have some reality. But what you can't live with hasn't got much reality. The reality lies in the fact that by living with it, you grow. You love your family, you take care of them. You have the joys of simple things. Whereas when you get very complicated with a great being involved political theory, you end up by murdering your neighbors. And it is the same all the way along. We are gradually getting back the religion we lost before the beginning of World War I. We are beginning to see again the rise of a spiritual communion. Why? Because we can't stand things as they are. We have suddenly discovered that materiality and all of its byproducts cannot be lived with without destruction. We cannot keep these rules because they're not rules. They're the selfish products of human ambitions. Now, how did we get them? We simply got them by giving them as a scientific or political identity. We finally decided that we could get rid of religion by declaring that there was no God. And yet, I think they were correct when they said, with one of our earliest astronomers, the undevout astronomer is a fool. Actually, all the lines of knowledge we have, algebra, calculus, physics, all these things work upon laws. Who made the laws? We didn't. Why do these laws go on without error or without failure so that every science is indebted to them? We didn't do this. We only watched and saw and had an opportunity to share in the unfoldment of a universe dominated by law, and that this law was beautiful, honest, and suitable to the needs of all living things. The laws that were man-made were for himself alone. The laws of nature are for all that lives on any plane of any stand of life. So we can look around and see all this knowledge. We can see the political system, the shape that is in. That is where we have made all the laws of politics. But in the universe, the universal government is part, as Plato has so clearly pointed out, of a divine hierarchy of orders. There is a perfect government in space, and we haven't had sense enough to copy it. We have tried to improve on it by taking away the morality. The thing that always worried us was good and evil. We had a suspicion that if we were good enough, we couldn't be evil. And if we couldn't be evil, we wouldn't be rich. There's something very serious about that. And even if we weren't rich, we wouldn't be famous either. Always the universe had to be built around what it would do for us, regardless of what it did do, what it could do for itself and all living things that have come and must come in the future. So we have here now a problem of reconstructing something to live by. Reconstructing a way of life that will bring nations together in leagues that hold, that will make it possible for those of different faiths to abide together. It is not necessary to call everyone who doesn't agree with you an atheist. It is not necessary to declare that you and you alone can be right in everything. But there is opportunity to create some kind of a world pattern of, we might call, morality and ethics and religion and philosophy. We are outgrowing the confusion. We can no longer live with it. It is no longer suitable to us. And yet if we don't do something about it, we're going to die of it. We look around us and we find millions of young people in our civilization, young people who can't read and write. We look around and we find many institutions which are there simply because they didn't have sense enough or didn't have courage enough to stay by their principles. Everywhere we see people suffering from a kind of ignorance that you wouldn't think an average farmer would tolerate. Ignorance of right, ignorance of principle, ignorance of honesty and honor, moral ignorance, all these things. Where do we live in a world which we boast has more universities than it ever had before and charges more to get into them? We can't say too much for the academic record, but they're good in the athletics, no question about it. And they are giving us this product. They are giving us a world in which people are being graduated as people are not fit to fit the world into a world that is not fit to receive them. So I think this is a problem in stress. The stress being some way of changing this pattern, some way of getting things back in circulation properly, so that we're not going to be in this problem forever. Well, several people are trying it. Here and there someone is succeeding fairly well. But now comes another problem. When you come to trying to clean up a bad mess, you may run against something else. You may run against the fact that the cleaning company is also in the mess. That you may find that they find their unnecessary profits in cleaning up messes. That even ulterior motives reach even into the corrective methods. The right motives are very hard to find. When we find something we need for our health, we have to be careful that the moment it is known to be helpful, it is not exploited. So every change is exploited. Every thought is focused upon one thing, profit. Well, look at how it took theater nearly 300 years from the time of the Shakespearean theater in England to the present time to get a theater so bad that we can't hardly stand it. The English theater was immoral in the extreme, and only the nobles who had private theaters were able to produce good plays. Today we have a motion picture television programming that is not fit to be seen. It is not doing anything for anybody. It's doing only one possible feature, and that is profit, and that is falling off, and that has everybody miserable. Why don't we face into some of these things? Here we are praying for world peace and sending out another order for munitions. Here we are trying to get to live together better, trying to conquer each other's oil supplies. Everything goes the same way, talk down, nothing happens. So we've got to do something to find out why it doesn't happen. Now most people, average people, are basically inclined to be decent. They would like to do things right. They would like their children to be decent. They'd like to have all the things that they might have had in education and hope, but which were denied to them by an economic system that enslaved them. So there is a great number of people who would like to do it right. Now, there's a way of helping them to do this right. We have in the world today about, 6.25 billion people. Of that 6.25 billion, better than 3 billion are religion-oriented. That means that for these people, the spiritual value is the basic reality. Now, this doesn't mean that there are all or any of them living it, but it means that they are susceptible to the influence of religious thinking. They're susceptible to being brought into harmony with the reality of a divine good at the source of life. Over 3 billion here in this planet believe in God, and probably considerably more, not listed, but in fact, actually in the silence of themselves have the same belief. The belief in God is probably the largest singular belief that we have. It is a belief, however, which has produced comparatively little result, because if it was honest, it was hurt, it was injured, it was persecuted, and if it was dishonest, it simply added to the general mass. But there is a great nucleus of people who believe in realities, and believe that these realities are spiritual. And they believe also that these realities must be lived if we want to get out of the mess. We're not going to get out of the mess until we stop being selfish, until we stop being egotists, combative, and competing with each other for the last nickel. We're not going to get out of any mess until in our own hearts the greater good controls our conduct. And we're not going to find a motive large enough for that unless we realize that the divine plan itself has given us a universe which will reward those who deserve it and will punish those who lack morality and ethics. These things we have to face now, because there's another century coming. Another century, and it doesn't look so good at the moment. It looks like more wars, more trouble, more conflicts, more people biting at each other. Why? Because there are certain false values that will not die. And among these false values is personal profit. Personal profit and personal aggrandizement. The individual wishing to be important finds it easier to be important by being rich than by being intelligent. People who believe in getting some kind of fame are not too particular how they get it. They would like to be honest, but whichever acts they make or actions they conduct by means of which they get a cheer is more important to them. Little by little, all these things are coming to a head. The prisons don't know what to do with the prisoners. Young people, they can't even jail them. Our crimes are more recent ever than before in history. Everything is out of hand, and there's nothing going to help it unless something puts it back in the hand. And you can't put it back simply by passing laws. This idea of passing laws is no help. You've got to put it back in hand by helping people to understand the integrities of life. You've got to change your educational program to show people how nature itself is working day and night to help to protect us, and we are personally tearing down every protection that nature provides. We've got to realize that everything in the universe is working for good except us, and we're working for profit, and all we're getting is loss. So we have to begin to think a new philosophy of life, a new philosophy of ethics, a new philosophy of morality. We don't have to go back to the superstitions of the past, but we certainly have to go forward from the superstitions of the moment, which are wealth and fame. We need everyone to work to build an idealism that we will commonly accept as a common heritage. We had that in the old days in the Mosaic Code, the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. We had a little addition to it with very valuable thoughts when we had the Sermon on the Mount. Every nation has had these codes. There is a place in Jerusalem where the equivalent of the Ten Commandments in practically all the nations of the world is on exhibition. There are also all over proofs that every nominal religion of the world has been ethical, moral, and idealistic in principle. And every one of them has been destroyed by selfishness and misinterpretation. We know, for instance, it says in the Quran that those who do not believe that Jesus Christ was a messenger sent of God, those will not enter heaven. And yet neither the Muslim nor anybody else quotes it much. We need to get an idea that there is a universal religious principle. Then that principle is sustained by the biochemistry and psychochemistry of existence itself. The great religion is sustained by cosmogony, astrology, anthropology, and everything you can think of. There is a great universal reason for everything. And there is also a universal law, a way by which everything can be accomplished that is reasonable. But we've got to begin looking for it. We've got to begin to realize that wealth is not the end. That wealth will leave us all floating around somewhere in space on a dead world. that we can destroy the planet and everything in it with our ambitions, our wealth, and our materialism. But if we want to survive, we've got to do something else. There is some talk about what planet we're going to ruin next. We haven't gotten to it yet, but I don't think we're going to get a chance that way. We're going to have to solve our problem, and we've got everything necessary to solve it. The only thing we haven't got is that inner unselfishness and dedication which is necessary. Now it seems that in this moment and in these periods, that the most important thing that education can bestow upon anyone is incentive. It can give the individual a realization of his own place in the plan of things. Education can convey to the average person some concept of the world in which he lives, its history, its destiny, and the various processes through which it is passing. Education can fit the individual for a better life than he has at the moment. But to do this, education must devote itself primarily to the proving of the integrity of the universal purpose. Education must prove to the convenience and to the conviction of many people that the whole great plan of life is the unfoldment of one great doctrine for the salvation of all that lives. This salvation is not necessarily theological, but it is more than that. Salvation means that whatever the divine power is at the root of life, that power is the Savior of all that lives, and that which lives according to that power will never die. We know this from the traditions of our fathers. We know it also from the experiences of today. We see the faults falling on every hand. We see the proud coming down to disaster. We find our great people bound and linked with deformity of all kinds. All these things we begin to see. We see a world in which we cannot find the type of person we think we need. They are there, but they are silent. We can bring them out. And those which are in doubt, and those which are now making mistakes, will be probably easily converted if we get a solid core for them to work with. So I think that the idea that we have of stress at the moment relates largely to the stress of the effort to solve a problem that is in our very presence getting completely out of hand. It's reaching a point today where it is liable to enter the home of any one of us and destroy everything that we hold sacred. There is no release, no salvation in any of the programs that are being advanced. They are all to pay bills or make new ones. They are all to create new programs for armament and new programs for inter-economic cooperation. What we need desperately is programs for honest human understanding. We need programs leading to brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of the divine power. We are needing programs which help us to work together and not work each other. All these things have to come. And now, I think we're on the verge of something. Don't be surprised. There's liable to be some more complications arise out of the happenings that we've been hearing about in the last 10 days. We are in the presence of a further proof of the fallacy of our way of life. We're here to recognize as a fact that all we're doing is sitting here waiting for somebody to kill us, and that we have no realization of our responsibilities to ourselves or to anyone else, that we cannot hope to solve our difficulties by the present method. Now, to start with, maybe, you can't start with yourself. Now, it's a funny thing. Many people think they're pristine pure as far as these problems are concerned. But there's something a little bit sometimes in each one of us that is like a little recognition, or a little increase in salary, a little of this or a little of that, a recognition for our religion or our beliefs. The thing we have to start in with is to build up a new concept of life, to take the stress out of our own relations. Every person who is dissatisfied is stress-ridden. And anyone who isn't dissatisfied with things as they are now is not only stress-ridden, but hopelessly ill. The time has come when things have to be markedly improved. And so it comes to the idea that We need a new educational system. Well, we've been thinking of that here a little bit been trying to work out some ideas in that matter. But we need something to teach people how to live instead of how to kill each other. We need people who want to share what they have with those who need it instead of taking away from them the little that they have. We have all kinds of knowledge that is necessary to lead ways of peace and integrity. We have all the keys, all the instruments that are necessary to build a cooperative economic educational system which is dedicated to the production of intelligent, cooperating people to whom the idea of war is naturally abhorrent, but who will not corrupt their personal morals in order to justify a war. In India, there was a very interesting fable. A Buddhist general in the army of the great teachings of the Mahabharata. And he came to Buddha. He said to him, "Lord, I want to be a Buddhist, but I am the general of the army of the Raja. I am sworn to protect him from his enemies, and to protect his estates, and to protect his citizens. Now, how can I be a Buddhist when I have taken a vow to protect him, so that if war comes, I must fight his enemies? How can I live the life without vice or hurt?" And Buddha said to it, "It's very simple, my friend, very simple. You have taken an obligation to serve your prince. It's an honorable obligation as far as the material world is concerned. Therefore, if the time should come, then you must go out and maybe die for your prince or kill for him. Then you must do it. But you must remember that if you kill, you will in turn be killed. And any evil that you commit to protect your master will come back on yourself. You will not be punished eternally, but if you break the rules of hurtless living, you must pay for it, whether you're a Buddhist or not. Therefore, serve your master. But if you want something unreasonable of you, serve him. But realize that you are a martyr to his need, and that you must carry the responsibility." Well, it's a kind of an abstruse way of saying something, but it is partially true. Namely, that there are things we will always have to do that may not be just what we want to do. But if we do definitely the best we can, if we build a new concept of value, I think we can very shortly accomplish a great deal of good. If we look over the world today with the nations of the world, we realize that most of them have suffered keenly in recent years. Whole nations have been wiped out. Millions have died for the selfishness and ambitions of warlords. Others have died for the ambitions of great industrialists and economists and the inevitable profit takers. So we can say very simply that there is a way in which we can gradually get rid of the most common of these ills. We can end forever wars that are fought for profit. We can end forever the laws that are made to favor groups at the expense of the common good. We can destroy or wipe out forever the rules which permit narcotics addiction to young people of our country. We can gradually weed out obvious corruption and get rid of it. And if we weed out obvious corruption, we will weed out with it obvious profit. And with those things wiped out, there is a chance for something constructive to get a start. Now, we may not do it with everyone, but we can start with ourselves and a few people whom we believe in. We can try to our best to dedicate our own efforts as to the stressful labor of making it a safer world. That we will try to, if we have to suffer, that we will suffer for something worthwhile. We will suffer to accomplish that which needs to be accomplished and which has not been accomplished. have to go out and fight for things that are falling apart while we fight for them, and also fight over them. The rules and laws of living are very important. Sometime in the golden age to come, there will be a world code of life. There will be a way of life that is commonly agreed upon by all. And when that day comes, whole groups of people that now are miscellaneously believing will be on their knees giving thanks. But when the child coming into the world in that time comes here and receives the good things of life, is given the strength and wisdom and insight to become a constructive citizen, when all these problems of poverty, congestion, and all kinds of stress are gradually fade away, we will find that the earth is a very good place, and that it also has its own rules. The earth has laws. The birds and the bugs and the trees have laws. Everything in nature is lawful except man, and he is out trying to destroy laws. This is something he cannot do. The laws that he tries to destroy will cripple him. And in the long run of things, he must bow to them, as he has always had to since the dawn of time. Back in among the Greeks and peoples of that type, there was a realization of something that we might need yet too. The Greeks were perfectly aware of that. All the peoples of the world were not going to agree with them on their beliefs. So they established institutions, which they called the mysteries. And these were for the purpose of preserving the integrities of leadership. Now we have higher universities and all kinds of places to teach people to work in certain special deals, one kind or another. The Greeks did it, and the Romans tried to do it, but their morality and ethics broke down. But the Greeks did do fairly well with it. If you wish to be a Greek citizen, if you wish to really amount to something in Greece, you didn't go to just the school. You found yourself a teacher, like Socrates, or Aristotle, or Plato, and you became his disciple for 10, 20 years, as Alcibiades did. And you become a philosopher like your master. And when people wanted help, they came to the philosopher. They came to the individual who had studied these matters. From the philosophers of Greece were selected those who were to serve the various temples, creating what were called the mysteries. The esoteric teachings, the secret doctrines of antiquity were in the keeping of these mystics in the temples and shrines of the faith. You had to go in and you had to graduate. You had to guarantee to be honorable. If you did not, you were not permitted to enter. Supposing you wish to be an Akon, that is, a man of the ruling group of Athens, and you had your proper credentials from a teacher, then you went to the temple, and you presented your petition. You felt you wished to be an Akon, or a leader of the people. Then the master of the mysteries, the old priest, would say, all right, now you take your oaths and you experience. Show that you can suffer for principle. Show that you can go through temptation without faltering for a moment to protect the common good. And prove beyond all question of doubt that you're incorruptible. Because if you take these obligations and you are then corrupted, you're very liable to disappear and not be seen again. Those who break the oaths of integrity are not forgiven easily. Those who make mistakes but have no obligations are children. We will try to help them. But when you know better and you do badly, then comes punishment. The punishment that was given and accorded to the first great philosophers were the gods of antiquity. Therefore, if you wish to become a leader of the people, a judge, a legislator, you take the oath of integrities. You put death before dishonor. You prove conclusively that you're incorruptible for money, that you will never fall for any fame, that no matter what happens, you will give even justice to the rich and the poor, and will in all matters fulfill the teachings that you have received of idealism, integrity, and divine worship. Well, with that kind of system, the Greeks got along pretty well until the Romans conquered them. Now, why did the Romans conquer them? The Romans conquered them for the very same reason that modern materialism is conquering us. They wanted to remove the barriers that would prevent personal selfishness. They wanted to make sure that you could be rich, break all the rules, and enjoy the good life. Well, the Greeks said no. If you tried that, they can take you out and either imprison you, or you would disappear into the subterranean passageways of the temple, and no one would know what happened to you. But in all matters, if you kept the obligations, you then became a faithful servant of your people. In Sparta, the same thing was true. Sparta was a very simple but a very courageous little state that survived on the principle that it would permit no corruption. The Spartan lived by a code, and he chose to die by it rather than corrupt it. His integrities, his values of right and wrong were severe, but they were just. And as a result of that, Sparta continued for a long time to be a model of an economic integrity. All these things have been tried and done. And in most cases, the great ones of the past have gone on until the world around them has become so powerful in its corruptions that it obscured them. And it did it by means of national barriers. When the Romans became stronger than the Greeks could not control them. When modern man and all these nations become stronger than the integrities of our lives, we cannot control them. So the mass of corruption destroys the control of the small group of dedicated persons. But that small dedicated group can go on. Go on as the early Christians went on in Rome. They were persecuted and martyred in every way, but they lived because they were sustained by one solid conviction that what they were doing was necessary. Everywhere virtue survives, but in small groups. The time for it now is to come out of its shelter, to come out of its hiding place, and to be encouraged to lead people along the way of integrities. It is very necessary that within the next 25 or 50 years we find out how foolish we've been. And if we don't have to go and take a big course on it, all you've got to do is read the daily paper. And you will see just exactly what we're doing that should never be done, and what we are not doing that should have been done already. All these things will help us to gradually realize that the bad examples that we see are the basis of instruction. If these people were not making these foolish mistakes, we probably would never notice it. But once we see how foolish they are, we realize that when we do the same thing, we are equally foolish. And this is the beginning of a better way of life. So we take the stress of life and take a little of the stress out of it. We can make our own lives probably 90% stress-free, even under the most difficult situations. We can do it because if we have no false ideas, we have very few conflicts. There is no one that can really tell us that we can't be honest. And if we don't ask anybody else, we're all right. Because if we are honest and do as we should, we know if that is right, and there is no stress in us. And if we quietly go along, do the things that need doing, and in every way try to protect the integrities of life, educate our children properly, make certain that the various responsibilities of life are met, and wherever a ballot comes up, vote for that which is the best. Do the best we can, get a little better all the time, and in a little while it'll show. And the thing that will make it show is something like has happened in the last 2 or 3 days, namely that the problems are beyond control. It's absolutely impossible to imagine a great world as we know it being in such a sick condition that it can't even tell where to go tomorrow, that it knows not what to do next. And all these governments with all these wealth are out spending money and getting nothing for it. All this is very important. The only place where money was valuable, according to the Greeks, was in the collection box of the temple, where it could be used to take care of the feeding of the poor. So we have all kinds of possibilities of things that need to be done. And the stress of our present unpleasantness will gradually get a little bigger. we will find this nation has to now go to and take care of some other country that is in worse trouble. And little by little, these things spread like a plague. And with all the wisdom we have, with all the education we claim, with all the wonderful rules and laws, the advantages and opportunities of life, we can't seem to take care of the selfishness and cupidity of human nature. So I would suspect strongly that at the root of life, far beyond the visible manifestations we know, there is a divine law, a divine plan, a divine purpose that was put into this creation when it was fashioned. After all, we didn't fashion it. It didn't come from nothing. It had to come from something. And when it came, it became beautiful. And it was magnificent until we gradually deformed it. But whatever it may be, it's there. And that great pattern of principles is still ready to work for us. And the only way we can have the law keep us is that we have got to keep the law. And we've got to realize that a great principle of good, immutable, irrefutable, eternal, lies at the root of existence. Behind all the worlds and planets and galaxies is an infinite life principle. And this life principle has within it the substance of virtue. And that which is virtuous with the life principle goes on, which is contrary to it is cast off. And we know that somewhere there was a wisdom that created existence, not just out of the planet. And if there's something big enough to create existence, it is worthy of our respect. And it is up to us to try to find out how that law would like us to act in the emergencies we face today. This is part of a good philosophy and a good ethics. And education should be devoted to preparing the individual to find the realities of life in which he lives, to discover how to be a good and proper citizen in a good and proper universe. We are all citizens of one state. We are all peoples of one nation. We are all children of one truth. We might as well get started at it and end this mess that we're working ourselves into in the last 100 years. It has become critically bad. We cannot continue this way. And the only way to get out of it is each individual to get himself out of it. And if he gets himself out of it and straightens out his own life, he will then at least have less stress and be able to cooperate with others when he recognizes that their purposes and their projects are similar to his own. This is a time now when it comes for every good man not to come to the aid of his body, but for every good man and woman to come to the aid of the universal principle which is necessary for our life and survival.